Hi guys, so I had somebody named Terry leave a question on one of my videos asking for my thoughts, suggestions, whatever around a situation that she is currently having with her almost 4-year-old son. He's not officially been diagnosed yet, but they're in the diagnosis process. And sorry, the question's just over here and the lighting is kind of weird, so hence I'm squinting. I should probably have my glasses on. Anyway, the situation that she's talking about is in relation to him and authority, and it sounds like it's more in relation to her and I guess when he does something that he's not supposed to and he kind of knows better, how to kind of discipline him. Because then what he does, sorry, I'm just going to move this a little bit and see if there's a little bit of this that I can, so let me just kind of read part of it because it is on my public wall. So Terry, I hope it's okay that I'm reading this. So her son, the challenge is communication is completely led by him and his wants. When we have to say no or he can't have it his own way, he explodes. He also says things to us like go to your room and tries to punish us, bracket, not that we punish him per se or we just send him to his room to calm down, which can be, end of bracket, which can be amusing, but as a stay-at-home mom, it does start to take its toll. And we do things like staying calm, using positive language, and not responding to anger with anger. I just want to be able to help him because it must be exhausting for him to be in such a fight or flight mode constantly. I do tell him me and Daddy are here to help him. He doesn't need to get so angry. And sometimes this works, but sometimes he hits, kicks, headbutts, and nips in anger or screams in our faces. She says that she also uses distraction to take her son's focus to something else. So I suppose I have techniques I use, but I'd still be fascinated to see what you say or have you experienced this. Yes, I have experienced this. I found that, especially when my son was younger, I would say about the same age as yours, that the outbursts were constant. And a lot of it was that he didn't communicate verbally, right? So the only way that he had to communicate was through hitting, headbutting, kicking. He didn't bite very much, thank goodness. But those were his forms of communication. And if you think about when you've lost your voice, for example, how frustrating that is, especially when the kids are getting into something and you have to yell across the room to tell them to stop because they're about to get hurt, right? Think of how frustrating that is when you as the mom has lost your voice. So that's what I try to keep in mind whenever there's a situation where I know that he's upset. For my son, sending him to his room never worked. One, he wouldn't go, and two, when he was having that kind of an outburst, there's no way that I could move him, even when he was like 4 or 5 years old, because there's, the typical kid that flops down or whatever and is having a tantrum, and then you add autism strength on top of that, right? Like, it's just, you can't. And I mean, I'm not a small girl. I'm 5'10", like, So I did start with the, timeouts and on the stair, right? Because then usually he would go to the stair. And I've read all the specialists always say child rearing specialists, I should say, not the autism specialists, but say to do the timeout for 1 minute for their age. Well, that doesn't work with kids with autism because, one, they either want to be there because they want to get away from the overstimulus that they are currently experiencing, or two, they have no concept, right, of time. So what our timeouts look like, and I think I started them around the same age as your son Terry, was that, I'd get him onto the stair and I'd tell him, very calmly, very just, regular tone of voice, no matter how crazy I was feeling inside. And I would tell him, I'm putting you in timeout because, and whatever it was. Usually we actually have certain rules in our home that ironically my boyfriend actually started them. And rule number 1 is always listen to mom. And really, as long as you follow rule number 1, then you don't have to worry about the other rules. But the big one is, you weren't listening to mommy when you were doing this. And that seems to work fairly well. He will now actually sit there and say time out, time out, time out. But, I've been doing it for a few years now, right? And I should state as well that I do not do timeouts when he's in a meltdown. A meltdown is totally different, right? Like a meltdown there is no controlling whatsoever. He's been overstimulated and he's trying his best to self-soothe, and it's totally different. I'm talking about behavior that should not be happening, that he's having a tantrum, or he's done something that he knows that he shouldn't, like it's regular discipline, not autistic meltdown. Those are two very, very different things. And then in the timeout, I repeat to him, I let him have a moment to kind of let that sink in. And then I tell him, 2 minutes in timeout. And I kind of stand near there, but not looking at him. If he tries to get up, I just put him back. Same thing, you're in timeout, you need to stay here for 2 minutes. And then, and it's 2 minutes. Depending on how well he's staying there. And then before I let him leave from the step, I tell him, I put you in timeout because you did not follow rule number 1, which is usually what it is. What is rule number 1? And he repeats back to me, always listen to mommy. And then I say, okay, and you did not listen to mommy when you did this. And I specifically mention what the behavior or action was. And then, do you understand me? Yes or no? And he says yes, usually. If he says no, please, which he likes to say as well, then I say, well, then you stay in timeout for 1 more minute. But he usually says yes. And then I tell him, okay, so we're not going to do that behavior anymore, right? And he goes, yes, yes. And then I say, I still love you. And I give him big hugs and kisses. And then I tell him, go off and play. I have not had to repeat that on any of those kind of behaviors. Now, with your son being almost 4 and you not necessarily having done these kind of timeouts, it may not work initially. You may need to actually kind of work through it and teach him what the process is. But know that, like, from what you've described, it seems to me that he's trying to communicate with you. He doesn't like that he's being disciplined. No kid does. But this is it's a discipline tact that we have used here in my home that seems to work. I hope that helps. Feel free to add anything in the comments below, Terry, or anybody else that sees this, what might work for disciplining your child with or without autism. But I'm going to restate that, we're not talking about a meltdown here. I don't discipline a meltdown. A meltdown is totally different. But there's behaviors that all kids do that they're not supposed to do, and that's what I'm talking about here. If he is hitting and kicking and doing all of that in response to your discipline, that can be added into the timeout as well, the timeout discussion of, you know, it is not acceptable. Hitting is bad. Hitting, you know, however the language is that you need to use to be able to stop that behavior, because he can't just hit you when you're disciplining him. It's not acceptable, right? And don't think that I've got it all figured out, because I don't. I'm still working on this with him. I'm sure I will constantly be working on this with him. But give it a try. Let me know how it goes too. I'd love to hear if this works, if you need additional support, if there's anything else that I can ramble on about how we do it here. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to try and to see how I can possibly break it down as well. Anyways, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below, guys. Talk to you later. Bye.